It was just an email. No sender, no title, no trace. Sarah Granger stared at the screen for almost a minute before clicking. A single sentence centered on the white screen as if written in the dark. Last echo is not what it seems. Someone needs to stop this. She was alone in the Quantico analysis room, the blue light from the monitor reflecting off the badge she still wore proudly for now. But what is it? Last echo. And why would someone risk everything to alert an FBI agent who wasn't even part of the counter-terrorism division? The truth. Last echo, it wasn't an enemy cell. It was an internal creation, an authorized, funded, protected experiment. And Sarah, she wasn't just any researcher. She was the next piece on the board. The target. The test. The trap. The strangest thing was that nothing about that notice seemed amateurish. The language, the timing, the way the message arrived without passing through the FBI's internal filters. Everything screamed planning. She looked around, searching for any movement in the hallway. No one. It was Sunday night. No one should be there, except her and someone who was probably already watching her. She tried to trace the message's IP address, but the source was an endless loop of international proxies that ended in an internal government server. This wasn't a warning. It was an invitation, an open portal to something she hadn't yet named but could already sense, like a storm brewing outside the window. Silent, but inevitable. Sarah opened a new file and began typing an informal report on the incident. Before she finished the first line, her session was automatically terminated. The screen went blank. When she tried to log in again, a message she had never seen before appeared. Restricted access. Unauthorized agent. She didn't know it yet, but at that moment her record was already being erased. The system had made its decision. Sarah Granger was no more. Sarah stared at the blocking message as if the system had spit out a secret. Unauthorized agent. This made no sense. She had level 4 clearance, unrestricted access to most of Quantico's security databases, and until an hour ago, her fingerprint unlocked any door. Now, it was as if she were trying to break into the wrong building. He tried the internal phone. No tone. The flashing red light on the device indicated a communication failure. He took the phone from his jacket pocket and activated the front camera just to confirm his face was still the same. It was, but something in his eyes had changed, the kind of look that appears when someone realizes they've entered a fight without knowing there was a war. She went down to the basement, to the physical records wing, a place where data couldn't be deleted with a click. She used a spare badge from the Criminal Intelligence Center, and the system accepted it. The old door sensor still recognized identities by the internal chip, not the digital database. Sarah entered, the metallic sound of the door closing behind her, echoing off the cold concrete walls. The shelves in Section 3 were lined with dates and internal codes. She went straight to the classified missions section and searched for the code that appeared in the anonymous message's header. Emails 77B. There was nothing. He searched for last echo. Nothing. He persisted for almost 20 minutes, using variations of the name, keywords, and old acronyms. Just when he was about to give up, he found a nearly illegible file hidden among documents from the Tactical Engineering Department. It had no cover, just a name written in red pen, Echo 7. She pulled out the binder. It was thick, heavy. The title page was stamped in smudged black ink. Internal use. File withheld. Inside, grainy photos of agents in the field. No captions. No officially recorded missions. One image showed a hall of mirrors, with a handcuffed man watching his own image multiply infinitely. Another, a sequence of neurological scans. Sarah leafed through it more quickly. On the last pages, an interrogation transcript caught her eye. Beside it, the name S. Granger was handwritten. She read the passage with a dry throat. It was a conversation between her and an officer she didn't recognize. Most disconcertingly, the interrogation date was 2 months earlier. She didn't remember ever being in an interrogation room, much less as a prisoner. Did you know you were being watched from day one at Quantico? No. I thought it was just part of the process. Do you remember what happened in Phase 3? There is no Phase 3. That's where you're wrong. Sarah clutched the paper tightly. The handwriting was familiar. Hers. This wasn't just a record, it was a broken reflection of what she once was, or what someone wanted her to believe she had been. She closed the file, trying to control her breathing. She needed more. Something more concrete. She returned to the internal record section, now searching for any mention of her own name, but what he found was the opposite. The folders that should have contained her performance evaluations, mission reports, and training records were empty. Some had her name carved out with razor blades. Others bore stamps that looked like smiles in her face. Reclassified. Archived by National Security. No access. She ran up the stairs as if fleeing a fire. There was no denying it anymore. She was being erased from the inside out. First from digital systems, now from physical records. She was alive, but the world was actively forgetting her. As she left the building, the night security guard, a newbie she had never seen before, stopped her with a mechanical expression. "May I see your identification, ma'am?" She handed over her badge. He passed it through the reader. The light turned red. "Sorry, this badge is no longer active. I'm Special Agent Sarah Granger, FBI. Strategic Intelligence Unit. Please accompany me to the director's office." The boy hesitated, then took a step back. "I need you to wait here." Sarah took 2 steps back, as if reconsidering a decision, and then she ran. She crossed the lobby, pushed open the emergency door, and exited around the side of the building, where the rain was beginning to fall in thin grey lines. As she turned the corner, she looked back and saw 2 men coming out of the glass door, talking on the radio. They weren't wearing uniforms. They didn't carry any insignia. She didn't come home. He slept in a rundown motel on Route 1 with the TV tuned to a dead channel and a gun in his hand. For the first time, Sarah began to wonder if this was all still part of the mission, or if the mission was now she. Sarah woke before sunrise. The gun was still in her hand. The sound of the old air conditioner blew as if it were the only sign of life in the musty room. For a moment, she almost believed it had all been a nightmare. But the loaded pistol, the deactivated badge in her pocket, and the faint ringing in her left ear told her otherwise. She put on her coat, tied her hair in a low bun, and left through the back door. At the reception desk, the attendant slept with only one earpiece on. The computer screen showed the image from the entrance's security camera, but it had been frozen for hours. Sarah walked to the parking lot, crossed the street and blended in with the group of workers waiting for the first morning bus. She needed a place with access to isolated systems, and there was one place she knew all too well. The Regional Intelligence Branch in Roslyn, an old building with a renovated facade, had forgotten hallways and old servers that still operated out of sync with the central network. She used the side entrance, using a business card from a retired acquaintance that she kept as an escape plan. On the 3rd floor, she slipped past 2 employees chatting about football. Neither of them noticed the agent who, just 2 days ago, would have had the authority to interrogate them right there. It was in the hallway of Sector C that she heard the noise, a light, metallic click, like a pen tapping rhythmically on a desk. When she looked down the hall, she saw a light on under the door to the room 43, a maintenance room that, as far as I knew, had been idle for months. Sarah walked slowly. As she approached, she heard a low male voice, as if reciting something. The doorknob was cold. She opened the door carefully. Inside, a middle-aged man with thinning hair and a tired look was writing in a small notebook, surrounded by old surveillance equipment. "You're here sooner than I expected," he said without looking up. Sarah cocked the gun. "Who are you?" "No one officially, but maybe the only one who still remembers who you are." "How do you know my name?" "Because you're part of Phase 4, Sarah, and they don't want you to know that." His name was Leon Tate, a former Department of Defense systems analyst, forced to retire 6 years ago due to emotional instability. But what he showed on the flash drive he gave Sarah didn't seem like the work of a madman. They were recordings, audio recordings of interrogations, monitoring sessions, and among them, in Sarah's voice, saying phrases she didn't remember saying, answering questions that seemed scripted. In one recording, she screamed. In another, she said coldly, "Mission accepted. Risk calculated. Memory authorized for partial retention." Sarah paused the last recording and looked at him. "Is this some kind of setup? Nothing here is staged. Everything was authorized, including the part where they make you forget." He explained in short sentences, a concept that seemed to come straight out of a science fiction film. Operation Last Echo. It was a network of field-based mental simulations, behavior tests in real-world environments. Agents like Sarah were placed in high-risk situations, exposed to trauma, loss, and emotional manipulation, all to measure how far they would go before breaking. The difference was, they didn't know they were being tested. They didn't even know what was real. Memories were erased or altered. Identities removed, all authorized by a hidden directive linked to the DoD. Sarah stood up, swallowing the anger that threatened to escape in the form of tears. "Why are you showing me this now?" "Because I saw your profile on the screen yesterday. Your name was last on the list. After you, the project goes into hibernation. And what happens to me?" "Nothing. That's what happens. You just disappear." Before they could continue, a sound cut through the silence. Someone outside the room. Tate blanked the screen and handed her a piece of paper with a sequence of coordinates and times. "This is the last station on the network. The truth is there, but go armed and don't trust anyone with a federal insignia." Sarah exited through a maintenance route and descended to the building's basement, crossing concrete corridors until she reached the exit through the ventilation shafts. When she reached the street, she merged with the morning traffic, crumpled paper in hand, and a single certainty burning in her mind. She was no longer an agent, it was a variable, and it was out of control. Sarah caught a train to Quantico late in the afternoon. The sky was heavy, as if carrying the same kind of tension she'd felt in her chest since leaving room 43. In her hands was only a piece of paper with scribbled coordinates, and Tate's warning echoing in her memory. The truth is out there, but go armed. She wore a simple cap and an old jacket. Nothing to draw attention to. He'd already noticed two men who seemed to have been in the same train car since Alexandria, but he preferred not to risk a confrontation just yet. Upon arriving at the station, he exited around the side, avoiding the main cameras, and followed a path through the trees that led to the back of the advanced training facility, where, years ago, as a trainee, he'd run during endurance training. The entrance to the site I was looking for wasn't on the plant's official map. It shouldn't even exist, but there it was. A maintenance access covered by metal plates, hidden beneath roots and branches. He used a master key he'd carried since his field operations and forced the lock with a sharp click. The door gave way, revealing a staircase that plunged into darkness. She descended carefully. The smell of rust and mildew was strong. Her flashlight illuminated damp concrete walls marked by old faded paint. At the end of the hallway, a rusty sign read, Sub-Level 3 Sector, Restricted Access. His heart raced. That's what was on the note. Entering the first room, he felt a chill run down his spine. Shelves lined every wall, crammed with cardboard boxes, floppy disks, microfilm, and folders marked with codes in red ink. Some boxes were open, with papers scattered across the floor. The feeling was abandoned, but not completely. Someone had been there, and not long ago. In a dark corner, he found a map. It was taped to the wall, scrawled all over by hand. Red dots marked specific locations in the U.S. Denver, Norfolk, El Paso, Seattle, and Quantico. In the center, written in capital letters, Map of Forgetfulness. Below, a sentence crossed out in black pen. It's not what you remember, it's what they made you forget. Sarah looked closer. She recognized some of the markings. They were old, decommissioned facilities, all with a history of leaks or official disasters that justified their closure. But now it all made sense. They were stations of the last Echo network, simulation cells, behavioral manipulation centers, and she had been to at least two of them without knowing it. In a rusty metal cabinet, he found a folder with his name on it, S. Granger, Protocolo 4B. As she opened it with trembling hands, inside were newspaper clippings with news of operations she believed to have been real. One of them reported a hostage rescue at a naval base, a mission she swore she had commanded, but next to the article was a stamped memo. Alpha-level simulation. Scenario projected. No actual fatalities. The date matched Sarah's memory exactly. The sensation was as if her mind was beginning to crack. How many of her memories were real, which had been implanted, or manipulated in real time? She continued searching through the files. She found the names of other agents, Miller, Vasquez, D. Cho, all with photos, records, detailed psychological evaluations, and all with the same final seal, inactive, beside it. Dates of death. Most were accidental, others suicide. The pattern was impossible to ignore. When he realized it, he was already crying, without realizing it. His mind was trying to grasp what was still solid, but even that seemed to be slipping through his fingers. A metallic sound behind her made her spin around, gun pointed. Nothing. The hallway door had closed on its own. The system was still active, or someone was operating it remotely. She grabbed as many documents as she could carry, stuffing them into an old backpack hanging from a chair. Before leaving, she spotted one last image, hanging on a rusted bulletin board, herself, in tactical gear, alongside two officers she'd never seen before. The caption underneath read, Omega-3 simulation subject approved for partial memory retention. On the way back down the stairs, she felt the air grow heavier. It was like coming up from a very deep dive. But what she was bringing with her wasn't just air. It was evidence, fragments, and questions that now kept multiplying. Outside, night had already fallen, and for the first time Sarah realized that maybe the person she thought she was never existed. Sarah drove aimlessly, the sound of the engine drowning out the confusion in her head. In the backpack on the back seat, physical evidence of the operation was packed. Images, reports, transcripts. At each stop, she ran the files through a portable scanner and uploaded them to encrypted temporary servers. She changed her SIM card every 20 minutes. She slept with the gun on her lap, waking with her heart racing even before she opened her eyes. The final coordinates Tate left pointed to an abandoned facility on the outskirts of Fort Meade, a former communications center decommissioned after an electrical fire in 2009. Or at least, that was the official version. On the map of Oblivion, it was marked as Freck 0. She arrived around midnight. The entrance was sealed with iron bars, but the side gate, where the equipment delivery area had been, was ajar. Sarah turned off the car's lights, put the pistol in her waistband, checked the knife on her ankle, and went inside. The facility seemed dead but alive inside, like a body in a coma. Cables still ran along the walls. Control panels flickered from time to time. The air smelled of metallic dust and static. In the central hallway, a broken panel displayed the name of the facility, Experimental Transmission Center, Echo Com Unit. That's when he heard it. A voice, whispered in a loop, came from one of the ancient speakers on the wall. She approached. Mission accepted. Risk calculated. Memory authorized for partial retention. The same recording he had heard on the flash drive, his own voice. Further ahead, she found the control room, an operations center buried in time. 4 chairs faced a curved panel, cables connected to helmets with sensors. Old monitors, some still working, showed videos. Busy streets, interrogations, explosions, phone calls, meetings. All the faces were familiar. They were hers. They were lives she didn't remember living. In the corner of the room, a screen displayed a sentence, Simulation 73C. In progress. The penny dropped with the weight of an avalanche. She had never left the simulation, not completely. The chase, the anonymous email, the map, all of this could have been part of another test. A higher layer of the illusion, Phase 4. Sarah stepped back, her hands trembling. She felt awake. But what if she was still trapped inside her own experiment? What if the real was just another construct? What was left of her? Before he could move, a door opened. A man walked in, wearing a Department of Defense uniform, grey hair, a firm posture, and a clinical gaze. Agent Granger, he said calmly. You've gone too far. She pointed the gun. Tell me what's going on now. You're at the end of the test, and you passed. You weren't supposed to get here, but you did. Is this real, or is it still part of the game? It depends on what you want to believe. He approached slowly. Last Echo, it was born as a psychological warfare simulation, extreme behavioral tests, but we discovered something more valuable, the possibility of reprogramming fear, of using agents like you to face terrors that can't be trained in academies. Sarah kept her finger on the trigger. Why did they choose me? Because you don't break, you bend, you mold, and now we want you to lead the next phase. He slid a tablet across the table. It displayed a contract. A new name, a new mission, and a button, Accept Simulation 74. Sarah was silent for several seconds. I could shoot. I could destroy everything there. Or I could press the button, back in control. Pretend I had power, but that would just be another layer, another lie. She picked up the tablet. She looked into his eyes. What happens if I refuse? You disappear, for real this time. What if I accept? You turn the machine. Sarah turned away. She walked toward the exit. Alarms beginning to blare behind her. The contract remained untouched. Hours later, an audio recording was posted anonymously on the dark web. It was her voice, slow and steady. My name is Sarah Granger, and if you're hearing this, it's too late. After that, nothing more was heard from her. Not by the government, not by the press, not by the ghosts that haunted the forgotten archives, but sometimes, among the dead frequencies of old radios, someone swears they heard that same voice repeating, Mission accepted, calculated risk, end, or almost. If you want to continue following stories like Sarah Granger's, where nothing is as it seems, and every choice could be your last, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. The next broadcast may be closer than you think.